I still remember the exact moment my world shattered. It was an ordinary Monday morning, coffee in hand, sitting at my desk in Austin. Then my phone buzzed with a bank alert. $115,000 charged to my credit card. I laughed at first, thinking it was a glitch. But when I checked the transactions, my blood ran cold. The shipping address on several purchases was my parents' house in Ohio. I never imagined my own family could do something like this to me. Before I share what happened next, let me know where you are watching from today. Drop a comment below with your location. If you find this story meaningful, please hit that like button and subscribe to join our community. What I discovered next made me question everything I believed about family loyalty. Stay with me. My name does not matter as much as what happened to me, but I will tell you a bit about myself so you understand why this betrayal cuts so deep. I am 31 years old, born and raised in Columbus, Ohio. For the past 5 years, I have been living in Austin, Texas, working as a software engineer for a growing tech company. I built my career from nothing. No family connections, no handouts, just countless late nights and endless determination. Growing up, I learned early that I had to rely on myself. My father, Harold, now 58, managed a retail store. He was strict with me, but somehow always found a soft spot for my younger sister. My mother, Linda, 55, worked part-time as a bookkeeper. She had this way of always making excuses for Emmeline, no matter what trouble my sister found herself in. Emmeline is 5 years younger than me, 26 now. She has never held a job longer than 6 months. Every time something went wrong in her life, and things always seemed to go wrong, our parents swooped in to rescue her. When I was her age, I was already paying my own rent and building my credit score from scratch. But I never complained. I told myself that was just how families worked. Some kids need more help than others. I spent years building my financial stability. I was proud of my credit score, proud that I had earned a credit card with a limit of $150,000. I used it responsibly for business expenses and occasional investments. That card represented everything I had worked for my independence, my future, my freedom from ever having to ask anyone for anything. Despite knowing my parents favored Emmeline, I genuinely loved my sister. I have these memories burned into my mind. Teaching her to ride a bicycle in our backyard when she was 7, standing up to bullies who made fun of her glasses in middle school. Even after I moved to Texas, I called her every week. We would talk about her dreams, her struggles, her plans. I believed in her. I really did. About 3 months before everything fell apart, Emmeline called me with excitement bubbling in her voice. She told me she was planning a trip to Europe: Paris, Rome, Milan, Greece. She said she had been saving money working extra shifts at the restaurant where she waited tables. I felt so proud of her. Finally, she was growing up, taking responsibility. Our parents confirmed this during our holiday calls, praising her transformation. I had no reason to doubt any of it. That Monday morning in April changed everything. I was reviewing some code when the notification popped up on my phone. Unusual activity detected on your account. I opened my banking app expecting to see some small fraudulent charge. Maybe someone had skimmed my card at a gas station. Instead, I saw a number that made my stomach drop. $115,247. I scrolled through the transactions with trembling fingers. Business class flights to Paris, $12,000. A luxury hotel in Rome for 2 weeks, $28,000. Shopping sprees at designer stores in Milan, $35,000. A private yacht charter in Santorini, $15,000. Michelin star restaurants, exclusive spa treatments, helicopter tours. The list went on and on. My first instinct was that my card had been stolen by some sophisticated hacking operation. I called my bank immediately to report the fraud. The representative was professional, asking routine questions. Did anyone else have access to my card information? Had I traveled recently? Did any family members know my card details? I assured her that no one could possibly have my information. I kept my card secure. Then she asked me to verify some shipping addresses associated with the purchases. She read off an address in Columbus, Ohio. My parents' address. I felt a chill run down my spine despite the warm Texas morning. There had to be some mistake. Maybe the fraudsters had randomly used that address. Coincidences happen, right? The bank put a temporary freeze on my account and opened an investigation. They said they would contact me within 48 hours with more information. I hung up the phone and sat there staring at the wall of my office. My hands were shaking as I picked up my phone again. I needed to call my mother. There had to be an explanation. There had to be. I dialed her number, my finger hovering over the call button for a long moment before I finally pressed it. She answered on the third ring, her voice unusually cheerful. I asked her about the address, about the strange transactions on my credit card. There was silence on the other end. A long, heavy silence that told me everything I needed to know before she even spoke. When my mother finally responded, her voice had shifted from cheerful to cautious. She asked me what I was talking about, what transactions. I explained about the $115,000 charged to my card over the past 2 months. I told her about the bank's investigation about the shipping address matching their home. Another pause. Then she said something that shattered whatever remaining hope I had. She said, "Oh, honey, that is the money for Emmeline's trip." She said it so casually, like we were discussing the weather. As if using my credit card without permission for over $100,000 was completely normal family behavior. My mind went blank for a moment. I could not process what she was telling me. I asked her what she meant by that. She explained, still in that eerily calm voice, that Emmeline deserved a first-class European experience. She said they could not afford to fund such a trip themselves, but they knew I could. They had planned to pay me back eventually, once they figured out their finances. Once Harold got his bonus. Once Linda picked up more hours. Once Emmeline found a better job after her trip. The justifications kept coming. Emmeline had been through so much. Emmeline needed this escape. Emmeline worked so hard and never got to enjoy life the way I did. I stood in my kitchen phone, pressed to my ear, feeling like I was living in someone else's nightmare. I asked the question I already dreaded the answer to. How did they get my card information? My mother hesitated before admitting the truth. When I came home for Christmas, Harold waited until I was asleep. He went through my wallet and photographed my credit card. Front and back. They had been planning this for months, she said, as if the premeditation somehow made it better. Before I could respond, I heard my father's voice in the background. He grabbed the phone from my mother. His tone was immediately aggressive, accusatory. He called me selfish. He said I had more money than I knew what to do with while my sister struggled. He said I owed them for raising me, for feeding me, for putting a roof over my head for 18 years. I tried to explain that this was theft. This was identity fraud. These were federal crimes. But Harold just laughed, a bitter, mocking sound. He asked if I planned to send my own parents to prison. He asked what kind of son would destroy his family over money. He demanded that I call the bank immediately and drop the investigation. I told him I could not do that. The bank had already opened a formal fraud case. Even if I wanted to stop it, the process was already in motion. My father's voice rose to a shout. He called me ungrateful. He called me heartless. He said Emmeline was right about me, that I had always looked down on them from my fancy Texas apartment. The call ended with him slamming down the phone. A few hours later, my phone buzzed with a long text message from Emmeline. I stared at her name on my screen for a full minute before opening it. Part of me still hoped she would apologize, would explain that our parents had pressured her, that she did not know where the money came from. Instead, her message was full of excuses and accusations. She admitted she knew about the credit card, but said she deserved that trip more than I deserved the money. She talked about how hard her life had been, how I had everything handed to me while she struggled. She said I was punishing her for being born second, for not being the favorite son. The message ended with words that felt like a knife to the chest. If you loved me, you would understand. I sat alone in my apartment that night, scrolling through Emmeline's Instagram. There she was posing in front of the Eiffel Tower wearing a designer coat, lounging on a yacht in the Mediterranean with a glass of champagne. showing off a new Gucci bag in Milan, a Cartier watch in Monaco. Her captions made my stomach turn. Living my best life. I deserve this. Dreams do come true. Not a single acknowledgement of where the money came from, not one word of gratitude. Just photo after photo of my sister enjoying a luxury vacation, funded by my stolen credit, while I sat in my small apartment wondering how I had been so blind. The bank called me 2 days later. A fraud investigator named Sandra wanted to meet with me in person. She came to my office, a professional woman with kind eyes and a folder full of evidence. She walked me through everything they had found. The IP addresses used to make the purchases traced back to my parents' home network. The shipping addresses confirmed repeated deliveries to their house. Credit card charges at stores showed timing consistent with Emmeline's social media posts. Sandra explained my options clearly. The evidence was overwhelming. This was textbook identity theft and credit card fraud. She could process my claim and restore my money, but doing so would mean the case would be referred to law enforcement. I would be asked if I wanted to press charges against the people who stole from me, my own parents, my own sister. She gave me time to think. She said she understood how complicated family situations could be, but she also said something that stayed with me. She said that what they did was a crime regardless of who they were to me. Being related to someone does not give them the right to steal from you. I thought about it for 2 days. I barely slept. I kept replaying every memory, every conversation, every moment I had spent believing my family loved me. And then I realized something painful, but true. They did not see me as a son or a brother. They saw me as a resource, an ATM with a heartbeat. I went back to Sandra's office and signed the papers. I authorized the investigation to proceed. I agreed to cooperate with law enforcement. As I walked out of that building, I knew my relationship with my parents and sister would never be the same. But for the first time in weeks, I felt like I was standing up for myself. The fallout was immediate and brutal. Within hours of signing those papers, my phone exploded with messages and calls. My mother left voicemail after voicemail, her tone swinging wildly between sobbing pleas and angry threats. In one message, she begged me to reconsider, saying she would never recover if her children were torn apart. In the next, she accused me of trying to destroy the family of valuing money over blood. My father's messages were worse. He left recordings filled with venom, calling me every name he could think of. He said I was no longer his son. He promised to tell everyone in our extended family what kind of person I really was. He swore he would make sure I never showed my face in Ohio again without being ashamed. Then the relatives started calling. Aunts and uncles I had not spoken to in years suddenly had opinions about my situation. My cousin Marcus called to tell me that family helps family, that I was being petty over money. Aunt Dorothy sent a long email about forgiveness and Christian values, conveniently ignoring that the crime in question was theft, not some minor disagreement. The message was clear. In my family's eyes, I was the villain for reporting a crime committed against me. Not my parents for stealing over $100,000. Not my sister for spending it on luxury vacations. Me. For having the audacity to stand up for myself. The pressure was overwhelming. I stopped sleeping more than a few hours a night. My work suffered as I found myself unable to concentrate on code when my mind was replaying every accusation, every insult, every sob from my mother. I started to question myself. Maybe I was being too harsh. Maybe I should have just let it go, paid off the debt myself, kept the peace. That is when Derek stepped in. Derek was my closest friend in Austin, a fellow software engineer who had started at the company around the same time I did. We had been through countless late nights and tight deadlines together. He noticed I was falling apart before I even admitted it to myself. One evening, he showed up at my apartment with takeout food and a 6-pack of beer. He did not push me to talk. He just sat there eating and watching a basketball game until I finally opened up about everything. I told him the whole story, the credit card, the trip, The family pressure, the guilt I could not shake. Derek listened without interrupting. When I finished, he was quiet for a moment. Then he told me about his own family. His older brother had a gambling addiction and had stolen from their parents for years. When Derek finally confronted him, his parents sided with the brother. Said Derek was tearing the family apart. Sound familiar? He told me something that night that changed how I saw everything. He said loving someone does not mean letting them destroy you. He said boundaries are not walls meant to keep people out. They are guidelines that teach people how to treat you. And if someone refuses to respect those guidelines, that tells you exactly how much they value you. Those words gave me the strength I needed. I was not being cruel by protecting myself. I was not being petty by expecting my family to treat me like a human being instead of a piggy bank. For the first time, I started to see the pattern clearly. The years of favoritism, the constant requests for money that were never repaid, the way my accomplishments were dismissed while Emmeline's smallest efforts were celebrated. A week later, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Aunt Patricia, my father's younger sister. Growing up, she had always been kind to me, though I rarely saw her since she lived in Oregon. She had heard about the situation from the family rumor mill, but unlike everyone else, she was not calling to lecture me. She said she knew the truth. She had watched how Harold and Linda treated me my whole life. She had seen the favoritism, the double standards, the way I was expected to give, while Emmeline was allowed to take. She told me things I had never known. My parents had borrowed money from multiple relatives over the years and never paid any of it back. Emmeline had stolen cash from Patricia's purse during a family reunion 2 years ago. This credit card scheme was not an isolated incident. It was just the biggest one. Patricia said she was proud of me for standing up for myself. She said she would testify on my behalf if the case went to court. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt like someone in my family actually saw me, actually understood. 2 weeks later, I came home from work to find 3 people standing outside my apartment building. My parents and Emmeline had driven all the way from Ohio without any warning. My mother's eyes were red and swollen. My father's face was set in a hard expression. Emmeline stood slightly behind them, looking bored. They demanded to be let inside. I refused. I spoke to them through the video intercom at the building entrance. My mother fell to her knees, crying and begging me to drop the charges. My father pounded on the glass door, shouting that I was making a mistake I would regret forever. The doorman looked alarmed and reached for the phone to call security. I stood my ground. I told them clearly that what they did was a crime. I told them I would not be withdrawing my statement. I told them that if they truly loved me, they would never have done this in the first place. Emmeline stepped forward, then her face twisted with contempt. She said 5 words that should have shattered me, but instead set me free. She said, "You are dead to me." I looked at her through that video screen. My little sister, the girl I taught to ride a bike, the girl I defended from bullies, the girl I called every week because I genuinely cared about her life. And I felt something unexpected, relief. I responded calmly. I said I would rather lose you than lose myself. Then I asked the security guard to escort them off the property. I watched from my window as they walked back to their car. My mother was still crying. My father was still shouting. Emmeline did not look back once. As their car disappeared down the street, I took the deepest breath I had taken in months. The family I thought I had was gone. But maybe for the first time, I was finally free. The legal process moved forward over the following months. The bank's investigation concluded that I was the victim of identity theft and credit card fraud. They restored the full amount to my account, $115,247. The case was then transferred to the district attorney's office. My parents and Emmeline were formally charged. Harold and Linda faced counts of identity theft and credit card fraud. Emmeline was charged as an accomplice since the investigation proved she knew the funds were stolen when she spent them. The evidence was overwhelming. transaction records, IP addresses, social media posts, with timestamps, shipping receipts. Their attorney advised them to take a plea deal rather than risk a public trial. In the end, they all pleaded guilty. The judge sentenced them to 3 years of probation, 200 hours of community service each, and mandatory restitution payments to the credit card company. A restraining order was issued, prohibiting them from contacting me in any way. The judge noted in her remarks that financial abuse within families is still abuse, and being related to someone does not exempt you from the consequences of criminal behavior. I wish I could say I felt victorious when the verdict came down, but mostly I just felt tired. The legal system had worked, my credit was restored, my name was cleared, but I had lost my entire immediate family in the process. That is not something you celebrate. That is something you grieve. The first few months after the case closed were the hardest. I went through phases of anger, sadness, guilt, and emptiness. Some nights I would wake up from dreams where Emmeline and I were kids again, playing in our backyard before everything got so complicated. I would lie there in the dark wondering if I had made the right choice, wondering if there was some other path I could have taken. I started seeing a therapist. Her name was Dr. Watkins, a calm woman with gray hair and a warm smile. She helped me understand that I was not responsible for my family's choices. She taught me that setting boundaries is not an act of cruelty, but an act of self-respect. She reminded me again and again that I could not control how others behaved, only how I responded. Slowly, I started to rebuild. I threw myself into my work and earned a promotion to senior engineer. I made deeper connections with friends like Derek, who had stood by me during the darkest times. I started traveling on my own, visiting places I had always dreamed of seeing. Not on stolen money, but on funds I had earned honestly, spent freely, without guilt or obligation. Aunt Patricia became my anchor to whatever was left of my family. We talked every Sunday evening, long conversations about everything and nothing. She flew to Austin for my birthday that year, and we spent a weekend exploring the city together. She told me stories about my father's childhood, about how their own parents had played favorites, how Harold had never learned to break the cycle. It helped me understand, even if it did not make me forgive. 2 years have passed since that Monday morning, when I first saw those charges on my account. I am sitting on the balcony of my new apartment, now watching the sunset over the Austin skyline. The city is painted in shades of orange and pink. The air is warm and still. I do not hate my parents or my sister. Hatred takes too much energy, and I have spent enough of my life giving them energy they did not deserve. What I feel now is something closer to acceptance. They made their choices. I made mine. We all have to live with the consequences. Sometimes I wonder what Emmeline is doing now, whether she ever thinks about me, whether she regrets anything, but those thoughts come less often than they used to. I have learned that you cannot save people who do not want to be saved. You cannot earn love from people who only know how to take. The most important lesson I learned through all of this is about self-worth. For years, I measured my value by how useful I was to others. I thought being a good son meant accepting whatever treatment my parents gave me. I thought being a good brother meant sacrificing my own well-being for someone who never sacrificed anything for me. I was wrong. Real love does not come with conditions. Real family does not steal from you and then blame you for being upset. Real relationships are built on mutual respect, not exploitation. And sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is walk away from people who only know how to hurt you. If you are watching this and you recognize something in my story, something that sounds like your own family, your own relationships, I want you to know that you are not alone. And more importantly, you are not obligated to set yourself on fire to keep others warm. Your peace matters. Your boundaries matter. You matter. I found my freedom by letting go of people I thought I could never live without. And you know what? I'm still here. I am still standing. In fact, I am standing taller than I ever did when I was bent over trying to carry their expectations. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever had to cut off a family member to protect yourself? What did that experience teach you about love and boundaries? Share your story in the comments below. Your words might help someone else who is going through the same thing right now. If this story touched you, please take a moment to hit that like button. It helps more people find these videos and maybe find the courage they need. Subscribe to the channel if you want to hear more stories about family healing and finding your way through difficult situations. And if you know someone who might need to hear this message today, please share this video with them. Thank you so much for being here with me. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope that wherever you are, whatever you are facing, you find the strength to choose yourself. Because at the end of the day, blood may be thicker than water, but it should never drown you. Take care of yourselves. I will see you in the next one.